Hey, what's going on, y'all? Knowledge coming at you again. Some more real talk. I had to speak on this whole 2Chainz thing that's going around. For you guys that are not aware, 2Chainz was held up at gunpoint in Oakland, California, and some guys ran up on him and tried to rob him. And there's a lot of different stories out. You got some people saying that he ran away from the guys, and then you had people saying that he ran after him, but he was told to stand down. And I got it tagged in a post today on Facebook, by my man G-Man. Y'all go check his channel out. I believe his channel is Mr. You Know Who It Is. Funny dude, makes cool videos. And basically everyone was talking about how 2Chainz was a fake gangster, and he was, because he ran away. Some guys came up on him, tried to jack his chain or whatever, and so-called the image that 2Chainz puts out is kind of like this whole he's not on too much on the Rick Ross vibe, but he talks about gangster stuff and the whole swag shit. That's pretty much his whole little gimmick that he has going on right now. But a lot of people was going at his head for running, and I had a different point of view of it because for you guys that don't know me personally, I've been shot at more than 3 times in my life, and it's not a good feeling. It brings a state of paranoia to you. To this day, I don't like too many people behind me, in a certain way. I don't like walking down main streets too much, especially if the cars are coming in the direction of behind me. I'm very observant with that because of those type of incidents. And, I think it's kind of funny how everybody is calling this guy a fake gangster or going at his head simply because he ran from some guys that were shooting at him. Now, anybody with common sense would not stand there, while somebody is trying to shoot at him. Anybody with common sense, you're going to take off running. That's a natural reaction. And, I just think that, it's really kind of messed up how people going at his head like that just because the man took off running. Anybody in that situation, whether you was 2Chainz, Rick Ross, or a conscious rapper like Talib Kweli or Common, any one of those rappers would have took off running, especially if you don't have a gun on you. Okay, that's just common sense. And, everybody was kind of going to this guy's head, and I just had a different point of view of it because nobody wants to sit there and be called a real gangster or quote unquote real nigga, but yet you 6 feet in the ground. Because at the end of the day, who's going to be affected by it the most is going to be that man's family. It's going to be his children, his mother. Those are the people who are going to be affected by it. At the end of the day, you stand there saying, yeah, I'm a real gangster. Look at me. I'm standing here while some guys are trying to rob me. They shooting at me. And I got the so-called gangster image towards the fans, but I'm dead. What does that, what do you get out of that? At the end of the day, people are going to go on with their own life, and it's going to be that man's family that's going to have to deal with that death. So I don't blame 2Chainz for running. If I was in that situation, if a lot of those people who were calling him fake were in that situation, would have took off running. And, I just think it's funny how people make comparisons or say, oh, they shouldn't have done this or you should have did this, and you never been shot at before. I think it's funny. That's like a privileged kid telling a kid that grew up in poverty his whole life what he should have done or what should have been going on within that child's lifestyle when you've never experienced that. So if you never experienced that, then a lot of your opinions are just going to be very biased and detached from what the situation really is. And a lot of times, people as hip hop fans or you like certain rappers, just like I say all the time, I've done several videos on hip hop. A lot of you guys take this stuff too serious. You have to understand that a lot of the music out today is simply entertainment. You can't think that, okay, because Rick Ross says, he's slinging pies and shit like that, or Chief Keef said he's gonna shoot somebody in the head, they really mean that. A lot of this stuff is entertainment. You have to understand that a lot of hip hop music is marketed to middle class white kids, and they love to hear that gangster. They want to feel or get some type of vibe of what it is to come out of those type of situations, or to be the so-called big drug dealer, or to come out the inner city, or to live the whole gangster lifestyle. They want to get a small glimpse through the music from that, and that's why a lot of that is pumped out on the radio, and you have a lot of gangster rappers that are being put out in the mainstream forefront, because that's what's selling. And I have now I'm not gonna say different point of view, but I have a more knowledgeable insight on hip hop, because I do work in the industry and I know the outs and ins and the ins and outs. A lot of the people out here that talk about hip hop every day, they're just hip hop listeners, and a lot of you guys are not. You don't even love the culture of hip hop. You just like rap music, and that's a whole different video. But I don't blame 2Chainz for running. Hey, I would have ran if I was in that situation. And this is different from when I did the video on Rick Ross and how he shut down all his tour days because the GDs was after. That was a different situation, because in that case, Rick Ross really walks around with this whole drug dealer gangster mentality, but yet you cancel your shows because somebody threatens you. Now, I understand this is entertainment, but I do think there is a fine line that should be maintained within your music. You cannot be a pussy, but you talking about all this gangster stuff. So, I do understand where a lot of people is coming from, man. I do think, some of this stuff, you do have to watch you say. Don't come out here and talk about how you gangster and you slap somebody up, or you this and you that, when that's really not your life and it never was your life. So I understand from that point of view. But in this situation where this man could have lost his life, I don't blame him for taking off running. I think that was a smart thing to do, because at the end of the day, nobody gives a damn about your life but your family. As long as you making music and all that, everybody's cool. The minute you're not making hit records, it's bye. Or 2Chainz fell off. And y'all that like rap out there, y'all know I'm telling the truth. But that's basically my opinion on this whole 2Chainz thing. Y'all gotta look at the reality stuff. Even the so-called real gangster, somebody that's really in the streets, really live a lot of this stuff that these rappers are talking about, they would have took off running. Because at the end of the day, you trying to save your life. You're not trying to stand there and buck it out with somebody that's shooting at you just to say you a real nigga or a real gangster. Come on now, let's be smart about this. And I don't see people going after R&B artists, when they talk about how, I want to love you and I'm the man you need and this and that and I'll treat you like a queen and all that, but yet they go around, they cheat on their wife or they cheat on their girlfriend. Do we go at R&B artists for that and say, oh, you're a hypocrite? Why are you cheating on your wife, but yet you making all these love records and saying how you such the greatest man on earth? Do we go at R&B artists? No. You know why? Because we understand that's just a song. If you like the song, cool. If you don't like the song, go to the next one. We understand that with R&B music, but it seems like with hip hop, everybody wants to take this stuff extremely to the heart, and they want to believe every single thing they hear in these records. You have to understand a lot of this is entertainment. Some of these artists are talking about their real lives. Some of them are not. Some of them are trying to feed their family. And a lot of you guys got to understand it out there. But, it's all about being safe. If anything, I feel like 2Chainz should have been prepared for this situation. If anything, maybe he needs to stop boosting and bragging about material objects that can be gone within the snap of a finger. And if you're going to talk about that stuff in your records, don't wear it out in public. What kind of person with common scruples wears a $150,000 chain on in public? Let's be real. And cats is out here hungry, can't pay their rent, they got kids to feed, they will jack you. So if anything, I just think that was his downfall, and you know, he should have been smart, and he should have had security with him. There's nothing wrong with getting security if you can afford it, because you know, security can prevent a lot of things from happening. But you know, this video is already longer than I wanted it to be, but that's how I feel about that whole thing. You know, don't blame this man for running away. Y'all would have ran away too. But I'm out, you know. Just like Jay-Z says, only entertainment.